So, Ryan, thank you so much for joining us.
You're very welcome. Pleasure to be here.
Pleasure to have you. Could
Two,
you just
two, two Brits in Central America.
two Brits in Central America? Who would have thought it?
Yeah.
Could you just kick us off and everyone who's listening and tell us a little bit about your background and what you do today?
Cool. What I did today?
What you do in general
Oh, okay.
terms today. You could tell us about what you did today. That's fine
Okay.
as well.
I'll get on that next. So I'm a nutritional therapist. I work with clients all around the world, whether it's from Australia, New Zealand, Iceland, even here in like Central America, and basically offer decentralized health approach, all focusing on optimal health at the end of the day, not getting bogged down with diagnosis or the craziness that you see on social media, just removing the information overload, sorry, and just getting to the truth about what optimal health is about and removing the obstacles in each and everyone's differentiation. Sorry, let me rewind that. So I'm a registered nutritionist or nutritional therapist. I'm originally from the UK, but now I'm in Central America at this moment in time in Nicaragua. So basically, I just work with clients around the world one-to-one and basically restore their health, focusing on optimal health, not getting bogged down with dietary nuances or diagnosis or the identity of this X issue, just focusing on really what matters. So again, I'm not really a specialist or have a niche. I have a fundamental understanding in a variety of things, and then just basically connect them together to really understand physiology and how this applies to each and every one of my clients and their unique personal needs or location, because this is the magic of health essentially.
Well, it's an important space you're filling there, because so much of the health world is just super polarized. Like, you've got one, and that's what gets attention, really. Like, you've got one side who's saying like only eat meat, and one side is saying only eat plants, and then naturally people gravitate to either side. So like, how have you battled through that, actually getting traction without being like too polarizing?
Yeah, I mean, when you're in the middle, when you use common sense essentially, and apply a bit of critical thinking, it's not sexy. So again, you can't really get traction saying, okay, let's eat plants and add meat, and or have a bit of variation between these two things, and like that's what we should be eating. It's not sexy, it's not attractive, it's not getting that sort of entertainment which social media essentially vibes with and wants people to engage and get basically bums on seats or eyes on phones and devices and on their channel. It's not gauging. But when you're obviously shouting from the rooftops like that's bullshit, or you're so weak that you can't handle a leaf from a plant, like there's big issues. And again, it's not that the general public or the people who care about health are to blame. It's just like, this is the information that gets fed through their screens right up front inside their face, and goes straight into their brains and sort of gets manipulated with all these sort of half truths. And again, like I said, it's not sexy to say, yeah, it depends. The context, the nuances, to discuss that is not really appealing, and it obviously takes longer than like a TikTok reel. And again, you're never really going to extract that on the captions or the comments. Like, I haven't got time to reply to people in comments. Like, I'm a practitioner. I speak to like 2-3 clients face to face a day, and I've got loads of replies to do on email and stuff. I'm not going to go through my social media stuff and comment with someone who's going to say I'm wrong. Like, what good is that? So again, I just remove all this like cloud of bullshit and basically apply the wisdom. And again, the wisdom is the value. Because again, I've got skin in the game. I've tried all these things. I've gone and done all the research on all these sort of subjects and trying to see what these people are trying to say that they think they're factually correct, and go in there, pick holes in it, and see this. And okay, maybe there's a bit of truth there. Maybe there's just more truth in this with this one person. But again, when we're using a general medium like social media, we have to be careful with what we say. And again, it's like nutrition is the new religion.
100%.
People now identify, like, instead of saying I'm Christian, you're saying now I'm carnivore. I'm gonna have carnivore tattooed on my
Super
body,
tribal.
or have a
Super
yeah,
tribal.
or have a yeah. So again, it's just like we've lost this sort of tribal human community with people, and now we just gravitate it with like dietary beliefs and connections. And again, it's just like, look at me, I'm carnivore, I'm better than you. Or I'm a vegan, you eat meat, you're a bad person. Again, it's not how it fundamentally works. And again, at the end of the day, nutrition, I'm a nutritionist. It is not the be all and end all. It's one of the legs of a chair, for example, but it's only working and functioning with the other three legs, and how that plays is largely based on the environment, essentially.
How did you get into nutrition?
Like most people in this health space, had health issues, asking questions, stumbled upon things, read a few things. Again, I got swayed in the whole thing around bulletproof coffee and Dave Asprey, and I had tunnel vision with that. And again, that led me down that pathway. And then I was like, okay, does this really make sense? And then I heard an opposing view, and this opposing view basically changed my perspectives. And then I realized, okay, there might be two sides of the coin, or it might be a bit more complex than a coin. It might be actually hexagon, and it's got more sides. And then it might actually be a bloody circle, and there's no sides. so this is basically how it works. And again, it's, you know, there's nothing wrong when you want to listen to someone. And again, it might kickstart you listening to these extreme people, because again, to be extreme, there must be something wrong going on in their physiology or your physiology. It gives you action to do, it's going to stimulate you to do action and do something, which is great. However, if you like take this identity and you're not open-minded to, okay, maybe this is a band-aid, maybe I don't need to fearing plants, or whatever it is, meat is dangerous. It's a dangerous and slippery slide, basically. And I don't know where we're going on that, but that's how I got into it, basically, with the bulletproof diet, biohacking space, and then basically just evolve from there. It's about evolving, and listening to different perspectives, reading different material, and just adapting all the time. And that's what humans are about. We're adapting. Like, we're Brits, we're in Central America. Our skin and brain is adapting to the environment right now.
Sometimes I feel adapted. Sometimes I feel like I'm in completely the wrong environment. Like in the summer here, I just get absolutely blasted by the heat. I'm inside with the aircon most of the time. So
well, does that make it worse, or does it make it better? Basically,
probably makes it worse, because I'm going contrast to contrast. Then immediately, it's like stepping in through a fridge to a sauna, like going straight outside rather than acclimatizing.
Exactly. Well, you're doing the same thing with like light, for example. This is why people think sunlight is dangerous. Is that they're indoors all the time. They step out at midday sun and they're like, oh my God, it's like a vampire. It's going to blind me. It's going to melt me away. Well, that's because you've gone from 0 to like 1,000. And again, when we get this like low grade stimulus of adaptation, we can build upon that, adding layers, a bit like training. You're breaking down muscle, and then you're going to come back and become stronger. Same things applies with sunlight. Same things applies with food and nutrition to a certain degree, because at the end of the day, every time we eat something, it's actually inflammatory. We are actually inducing inflammation in our bodies, no matter it's healthy or not.
How so? Break that down for us.
Well, again, like we're eating the outside world. Like, food is on the outside of us. Our gut is on the outside of us, and we're basically trying to make sense out of this food, and the potential of not basically organizing this signal can potentially open the door and cause problems. And again, we have the microbiome in there, we have bacteria, we have byproducts, we have gases which can inflict some damage. So there's potential every time we eat, we are opening the door for chaos, essentially. And again, everything that we do is a sort of stress response. It's an adaptation response. And again, regardless of it could be like the grass-fed steak, every time we eat, we are potentially opening up this door for the onslaught of inflammation. And again, that's when like people just go from this ketogenic diet template, go crazy with saturated fats. And again, that's been shown to increase intestinal permeability to a certain degree. And again, there's differentiation of different types of saturated fatty acids. But again, when we go in sunlight, it's a stressor. It causes damage. It's breaking down it's breaking down DNA. The same thing occurs in our bodies when we digest something. We're actually releasing light the microbiome actually releases light every time we eat. And again, if we can't control this light signal, then there's going to be chaos. And then again, that's like intestinal permeability, endotoxins coming through. And again, that wreaks havoc on our metabolism, on our hormonal signals. And again, that's basically summarizing whole our estrogen physiology, basically, which is a big connection with endotoxins.
So
does that make sense?
Yeah, it kind of. We're going to break a bit of it down, but have you noticed, because you're talking about hormonal response and stuff there, that's a big one now. We hear so much about toxins in our environment that interrupt our hormonal response. And I think most people are living in this constant state of inflammation anyway, like non-healthy inflammation that it doesn't go in a sort of nice, healthy cycle of increasing, reducing, increasing, reducing. But in terms of where you've been living, like I've found it nearly impossible to get away from plastics out here, like because all the water supply is shipped in plastics. And like, I mean, how have you got away from it? I mean,
yeah, I mean, unless I want to spend $2 on San Pellegrino every 4 bottles a day.
Plus well, that was the suggestion. That was the suggestion made to me.
Yeah, I mean, sure, I could do it. Again, it's probably not feasible for me to be doing that. Now, if I lived here, I would actually set up a filtration system in my home if I lived here and had a base here. And again, I'm traveling, I'm living out of a suitcase. So again, it's not feasible for me to do that or have a filtration system. So again, we have to really pick our battles in this modern world. So again, what really matters? Is it me putting energy and stressing about all the plastic, or can I let some plastic slide? Now, I can do smart things to make sure that the plastics is minimal being leached from this water. I can make sure the water itself is actually a good source and it doesn't have fluoride in. Is that the most important thing? I can actually improve my overall health and my redox, essentially, so the plastics doesn't even touch my body. So it just goes through me. And again, this is basically where microplastics go through the gut and they actually don't even enter our body. Who's to say that those microplastics will go in me if I have optimal health? And again, this is the context when we're looking at studies to see this. Has this really been shown? Are these studies or are these control subjects, are they actually healthy? Like we know, most people out there are not healthy. Even the people that assume they're healthy, they're not. So again, I don't really worry about like to the nth degree. I do my best. But even meat wrapped in plastic contains microplastics as well in that meat. Even your bottled raw milk in plastic has microplastics. And again, a great book to read upon this is Estrogenation. I've forgotten the author's name, but it's a great book discussing the more complex factors considering microplastics and how humans can get them in a diet or through their lifestyle. But even like microplastics is actually more of a problem when you're living in a city, breathing in. Yeah, when you're opening up a fresh packet from the Amazon, that release, new cars, these are getting inhaled and going straight into our bloodstream as well. At least our digestive system has several layers to help us with. And funny enough, even in the microplastics in the sea, in the ocean, there's certain bacteria which are actually breaking down the microplastics, which is just phenomenal. And again, maybe there's going to be a new probiotic out there that can actually break down the microplastics that we're consuming.
You know what? I actually heard about someone talking about having plastics seeded with these fungi, and then the fungi break down the plastics and it then goes into edible mushrooms. But then my thought on that is like, is that going to have some unintended consequences if we start feeding people on like plastic form fungi? It doesn't sound healthy, like just in an instinctive level.
Yeah, I mean, you have, again, you're playing God. It's like adding in like a man-made a vaccine or a virus into our bodies. You don't know what the repercussions are truly going to be.
This whole podcast has now been censored because we've said vaccine. So where do you fall down on the debate of plant-based versus animal-based diets?
It always leads with the N=1 personalized approach. So again, depends with the person I'm working with right now. So again, plants have unique compounds. And again, when we're even the things that we just don't even comprehend yet, that can't even be studied, even the type of water that these plants hold. An example being even like fermented cabbage has unique water, the cabbage juice basically, and this water has amazing properties for our body. And that's also the same thing when we talk about juices. So again, a lot of people in this space will poo-poo juices now, saying it's a fad. But again, there's some unique water which essentially gets structured via the plant. We squeeze that and extract it down. We consume that and we reap the rewards of that water, that hydrogen, essentially. So again, this is where we think about plants at the end of the day. What are they? Carbons and hydrogens, obviously with some oxygen in there as well. So again, I follow a very common sense approach. Whatever's growing within reason in your local area, that's what you should really be consuming with plants. But we can also apply that with the fats. So for example, people in the UK literally have no reason or rationale to be consuming avocados or coconut oil. It doesn't make any sense geographically. For us, it makes no sense for us to eat salmon. There's no salmon swimming in the sea out here. It's too warm. So again, these sort of common sense critical thinking should be applying with our nutritional choices and where we stand on the spectrum of plants and meats or plants and animals. And again, I think humans should gravitate more towards an animal side of the equation based on our modern society, just because we're insulted so much with radiation, circadian rhythm disruptions, essentially just poor mitochondrial health, that we do need more and need to utilize more nutrients from animal-based sources, especially when we think about blue light, when we're thinking about retinol, vitamin A, and when we're thinking about DHA attained from seafood. So I do think leaning more towards the animal-based side and then flexing the adaptation with plants, depending on where we are. And that would be basically purely from the sunlight aspect, using plants as a way of protecting our skin and our gut to a certain degree, and our eyes from the sunlight that we're getting stressed, like I said at the start, from building up our resilience.
But in terms of the mindset on the sort of, I guess, carnivore or keto or low carb space, you don't just boil down vegetables or potatoes or rice as just carbohydrates, and then carbohydrates just make sugar.
I mean, technically, at the end of the day, your mitochondria break all these foods down. There's no such thing as carbohydrates, protein, or fats. They just see it as basically like the atoms that they attain. And they break it down on the smallest scale, being electrons and protons. They don't give a shit about they don't give a shit really about, okay, if it's from a rice or from potato. They are sensitive to the type of hydrogen that these carbohydrates attain. And this is a thing called deuterium, which essentially is more concentrated within the tropics. So again, that's why fruit essentially has higher content of deuterium. And that's when we get a mismatch of people, for example, from the UK or from Europe, eating tropical fruit like bananas and have imbalances with their metabolism, essentially.
So tell us a bit about that. What is deuterium?
So it's essentially hydrogen has several isotopes, has 3 isotopes. So again, one of them would be deuterium, and it's slightly heavier because it contains a neutron within its center. So it has double the mass. And again, the mitochondria process food down to the smallest scale. And they are sensitive to hydrogen or the changes or variation within these isotopes of hydrogen, whether it's light or heavy. And because it's heavy, it has more mass, and it essentially impedes the thermodynamics of how energy flows within the cell and the mitochondria. So scaling it back, looking at metabolic pathways, we have glycolysis, the breakdown of sugar, carbohydrates, inside the cell. And again, there's various steps, all to do with breaking down this type of hydrogen. Then we go to the Krebs cycle. Then we see dehydrogenase enzymes within the Krebs cycle, the citric acid cycle. And then it goes on to the electron transport chain. So again, there's these safety mechanisms to ensure that this type of hydrogen is removed from the electron transport chain so we can efficiently transport energy or electrons through and create this gradient and make ATP, make water, carbon dioxide, and light at the end of the day. And when we're in a mismatch in our environment and food, this is basically where metabolic diseases occur, depending on your weakest link within your tissue. And that could be basically a genetic predisposition. It could potentially be a SNP. It could potentially be like some injury in that tissue, or maybe like you just induced yourself from like alcohol, as an example, and that would impair obviously the liver redox, or the gut redox, sorry, of maintaining the barrier integrity. So again, like this is the biggest issue that I see in the nutritional space, is like they're going down the dogma of like carnivore, keto, low carb, vegan, all this kind of shit. It doesn't really matter. Just eat what's in your environment, because again, our mitochondria, the powerhouses that create our energy, literally are somewhat racist to food outside of your local environment. They don't care where it's come from. They don't care if it's grass-fed. They don't care if it's like from an organic thing. They are aware of pesticides, but they break down the carbons, and they're sensitive to hydrogens in these foods. So this is what it boils down to. And again, I'm not a big carb believer. I mean, I'm the strongest I've ever been, and I'm eating less carbs, like so little carbs, it's unbelievable. And it is, again, like people don't question this shit. Like, why do you need carbohydrates? Well, sure, if I was an elite athlete and I wanted to enhance my performance and have optimal glycogen resynthesis and storage for an event or for something, then yeah, it has merit. But I'm just a general public, a general Joe who's just training. I don't need carbohydrates. And again, like we get fixated with like, I got to have carbs here, I can't train without carbs, I need my post-workout. It's just it's complete bullshit and excuses. But there's everyday like person.
There's the other side, which is like the people who are trying to stay in the middle, like your Lane Nortons or the Graham Tomlinsons, who are saying like, how dare you say anything about food and carbohydrates that doesn't just relate it down to calories in, calories out, because that's what they want to reduce the weight loss area. But that's the whole
the whole model is basically just on your body mass, on gravity, basically. And again, like there's not like, you can live that life. That's your choice. If you think that's really important and that matters for you to hold down your body mass and be psychotic about it and count every single gram, then you can do that. Is there repercussions of that? Is there a biological toll? Again, I'd question these sort of people. And look at them as well. Like that Graham Thomason guy, he just looks like
he looks sick.
Well, you said it, but he doesn't look like he's doing too well. And again, like it's just piss poor advice. And again, it's fitting their sort of narrative and their conflicts, which they should disclose that, yeah, they have a calorie counting app, or they've got cookbooks regarding like calorie counting recipes, because their model is all about reducing your calorie, increasing your output, and maybe some lifestyle factors. And then that's how it works. And again, for some people, that might be the kickstart to their journey of finding health. And again, losing weight, ideally body fat, is a good thing. We should encourage it. And if people want to do it from the external reasons or from a health perspective, like we should respect that as well and congratulate them on wanting to change and do better. And again, it's a stepping stone. Being aware of the calorie potential, the energy content of a certain food is important, but it doesn't necessarily mean that's what's going on and occurring in your mitochondria. So again, it really depends how you want to live your life. If you want to be tracking things and being aware of calories, the nutritional values of all the foods out there, add it into like this app, spend more time on your phone, live your life this way. If you really think you're going to do that when you're 60 and 70, I doubt you will. And again, these people go up and down. They yo-yo, just like bodybuilders, bulking, cutting. And again, that's actually associated with harder weight loss long-term, or fat loss. It gets harder each time you go up and down. And again, you see, I think Lane recently like competed in the bodybuilding, powerlifting show. And I think he done very well. And then he went off diet and like he's sort of ballooned out. And again, why? Well, the brain is regulating your energy metabolism, basically. So we should be focusing on what's going on within the brain. And again, like these people are always, when I see these people give out dietary advice, they're in a shitty environment, shit environment. And again, it's the Dunning-Kruger effect. They just get focused on like the nutrition, the protein, and they don't actually understand how these things play out in reality. And again, metabolic ward studies are not in reality. So yeah, while you might see like calorie controlled studies, differences in like low carb versus high carb, that's all good when it's controlled for. Put them in the real world of advertising, food everywhere, seeing recipes pop up, smell of food. Like right now, I can smell some food going on around me. Like this isn't normal. This is a really heightened food rewarding environment. And again, it's very taxing for our body. We need to be very strong and disciplined to a certain degree. And we need to trick and use our brain to not fall prey to sort of all these modern conditions that we're sending or giving ourselves.
Well, I think it's an interesting point, isn't it? That we have like, yes, energy balance on these studies does show that if you just have an energy deficit, then you will over time, lose weight. But the amount of people who do not have the control or the discipline that they haven't fostered yet, and the likelihood that they're still going to be able to have Mars bars and Snickers and like these different confectionery items in their diet while they're trying to lose weight and still be controlled about it is very unlikely.
It's mediocre. For me personally, it's a mediocre way to live. However, again, the context is like my life, how I live, where I am right now. What I do is very different to somebody else. They might have a shitty job. They might have a very traumatic relationship. They might not have the education around food. So I can see why they can do that. And again, I have empathy for these people. And that might just be their biggest thing is this Mars bar. So again, like taking that away from someone and having my train of thought can seem extreme to them because my reality is very different. However, I do think that, like you're alluding to, it's a slippery slope. Because again, you're making it hard for your body eating less when you're basically not changing the real things that matter with your efficiency of using energy. Your brain is inflamed. And then again, like after you lose that control and calorie counting approach, you're just gonna just go for it. And you're just like you just see it. You see it at Christmas. Oh, it's just this one holiday. I'm just gonna enjoy myself. And then like it just doesn't stop. Because again, the brain, your dopamine levels is going to be really influencing your choices. Because at the end of the day, like everything is a choice around us, and it's basically based off our behavior.
Yeah, I mean, the funny thing is, it's once you help someone understand the impact that food. There's the San Pellegrino coming in.
My friend, my friend just reloaded me when I scored one.
Well, good mate.
Yeah.
So like, because I've had clients who haven't understood how food is impacting their body above and beyond just this energy balance argument. And so the process was that, okay, let's get you to understand at least what portion size looks like. That was kind of level one. And then moving down the chain of kind of layers of complexity. And then it was looking at, okay, what's the balance of carbohydrate, protein, and fats in your diet? And then the next level was like, okay, let's remove the synthetic processed food. Let's see how you do with that out of the diet. And once we got to even about that level in, then they could start to see, hang on, if I eat this highly processed food, or if I eat crisps, or if I eat like chocolate bars, then it actually makes me feel crap. It diminishes my motivation. It reduces my satiety. I want to eat more of the crap. Like, so unless you have those experiences by removing these foods that are inflammatory and detrimental to your body, then it's very hard to get over that calorie balance argument.
Yeah, because again, the brain is aware of all these things that's going in your body, whether it's gut inflammation from eating like McDonald's, which has been shown to drop like testosterone 20% 3 hours after eating that, and increase like inflammatory markers. Like, again, the brain is picking up and sensing everything around in our whole environment, and that would include our gut as well, and making sense out of it. So again, when it's all in sync and flowing well, we make better decisions. We actually become more aware of everything that we're adding into our body. And for example, if I was indoors all day, I would feel like shit. But for some people, they don't have any further expansion of what it actually feels like to be outside in nature, to hear the sea. They're just used to this sort of reality of this is normal, this is how it should be. And again, it's just like you are also basically just changing the perspectives, that you're changing reality with your clients by doing this. And you're guiding them to build this awareness. And again, without awareness, we can't make any changes. We're unaware of what we don't know. And again, this is tied to like dopamine levels, basically. And again, that's tied essentially to our environment. It's tied to the way we sleep. It's tied to sunlight, basically, and amino acids, tyrosine and phenylalanine. And again, these get excited via sunlight exposure. So again, like, it's not just a diet that you're changing. They're also making these diet changes, and maybe they're having a knock-on effect where they're like, yeah, I don't feel shitty anymore. Let me walk to the shops and go to the farmer's market. Or let me, now I've got more energy, I'll go to the gym now. I can get that one extra rep in. And again, these are having compound effects. And they make a big difference. And again, it's non-linear. You might think these things are really small, but they magnify over time. Instead of like just sitting in bed when you're waking up, you're getting out, you're opening a window, you're sticking your head out, or you might be grounding, or you might have like some water straight away, instead of having coffee, or just answering your emails. So again, it's this whole lifestyle and everything, not just like the nitty-gritty stuff of like X versus Y, or this nutrient in this, or whether if like pork liver has got more B1 than chicken liver. Like, really, at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter. Just eat liver, for goodness sake. Again, we get bogged down with all this nutritional dilemmas when, like, are you actually lifting? Are you actually sleeping well? Are you actually exposing? You've got skin in the game. Are you downloading? Are you grounded? Are you being aware of all the EMS around you? All this kind of stuff, which are very much is like, for me, is much more important, because it's dictating back to the mitochondria how are we actually tunneling energy, like the flow for our body. Because again, like again, it comes back down to like, we're always being concerned with the nutrition, with the food, but if there's no oxygen there, it doesn't matter. Oxygen is basically the key thing of how we use all energy in the human body. And if it's not there, then there's going to be problems.
And you're talking, this is an illusion and a point towards breath work, or like how increasing oxygen in the body, or what are you alluding to specifically?
Well, oxygen utilization, essentially. So again, just because you breathe, again, there's an assumption, assumption with eating food, eating a calorie. You have an assumption, you're eating 100 calories, it's going to get processed in my body, and there's going to be energy out from that food. You assume that's going to take place, but what do you really know? What do you know about how the extraction of food works when you might have some sort of dysbiotic, overgrown bacteria, parasite, or whatever it is, or a test of permeability? Like, you presume that food is going where you think it's going, or you think the nutrient density with like taking 12 dozen oysters is going to just get your zinc levels up. You're assuming these things, and people assume that because they're in the sun, they're getting vitamin D. It doesn't actually work like that. There's a lot of factors to comprehend here. Again, just because you're breathing doesn't mean you're actually using oxygen. So as I'm talking, I'm expelling a lot of carbon dioxide. My utilization of oxygen is going down. And again, if I had an oximeter, I could see that, and my saturation would probably be like 94 right now, because I'm talking a lot. However, I'm compensating that because I'm outside. I'm basically just literally wearing shorts, nothing, and a hat, nothing else. So again, I'm actually enhancing how oxygen is being used, because there's UVA and there's infrared light here, and they're penetrating my skin, enhancing blood flow. And that blood flow is going to sort of enhance my oxygen delivery into the mitochondria. My free radical signal from the full spectrum of light is different to your light, because you're indoors, you're absent of infrared light.
Yeah, don't judge my environment at the moment, by the way.
But again, it's just like, so again, there's a lot of assumptions there. And again, like, we can measure this. Like, we can use like red blood cell profiles to see what your hemoglobin's like. We can look at carbon dioxide or bicarbonate in blood tests and see how well you're actually making energy. We can look at your protein handling, looking at the BUN creatinine ratio as an example. Are you burning through protein? And again, this is a big issue that I see with people like Gabrielle Lyon, just like talking about like a good story about like just eating more protein and like you build muscle mass. It's like, it's such a big assumption just there. Like, sure, most people could do with eating more protein. And again, that's definitely congratulations, step in the right direction. But again, how are you actually using this protein? How does like protein fundamentally work in the body? Again, protein has to be.
What was the name of the guy again that you said?
A woman, Gabrielle Lyon.
Gabrielle Lyon. So she's saying that
yeah.
even just eating protein is enough to build muscle, or she's talking about training as well, or?
Well, it's eating protein and training has a connection there, and muscle mass is tied to longevity, and it's for optimal health basically. And again, there's some truth into that, but however, it's like, again, she's around blue light. Her circadian rhythm is probably trashed. She's probably she wears makeup. So again, what she's doing is she's actually blocking light when she actually goes outside of actually hitting her face. I think she probably has like Botox or plastic surgery. What's that doing to her physiology? But again, how are we actually using protein? How does protein get broken down? And this comes down to like our sleep. There's a thing called the ubiquination, where we mark proteins for degradation. We can actually burn through proteins a lot when there's a lot of inflammation about. So again, it's about conservation laws, how water actually is all around and hydrating proteins within the cell, and how this basically unfolds. And again, proteins, DNA, RNA, enzymes, receptors, membrane channels. So again, proteins are everywhere, but they're all surrounded by water. And again, water is basically the biggest capacitor of our body. And again, it's downloading all the light from our environment. So again, if you're in a shitty environment and you're just obsessed with just the food choices and you're taking no consideration to the light, again, it's a half truth, because fundamentally you do need more protein because you're burning it through, but then you're stimulating this higher protein turnover, which again is going to be a slippery slope when you can't control it, or when you're just stimulating these growth signals and you can't turn them off, or you can't repair the damage. And again, this occurs at nighttime when we do spring cleaning, when we do hibernation mode, which is basically compounded now within our sleep in terms of like just a short window of cleaning up the carnage of the day.
So in terms of things like fasting and allowing our body to have these periods of not putting anything into it to process, it's things like that allow it to take its natural course. Because I mean, this extra level of, so I'm kind of familiar, I'm very familiar with fasting and, protein and macronutrients and all this stuff. But I spoke to Carrie Bennett yesterday, Carrie B Wellness. And
she's my friend.
Really? She blew my mind about light spectrums and everything. And you're talking about the same stuff here. So, I mean, what's your take on, like, if you can give us a layman's view of how light affects our energy levels, and how you approach your light exposure in the day?
So again, light shapes life. All food is a byproduct from light. I mean, food is just stored light at the end of the day. It's mass formed from light. And again, humans are no different. We're light beings. And I mean, that's the whole thing with nutrition and dietary guidelines. Understanding that, photosynthesis, different plants. There's an enzyme called rubisco, which changes what type of plants are grown in different environments. So again, if you don't understand photosynthesis as a nutritionist, you really don't understand food or what you're talking about with your clients. But basically, light enhances our health. It influences the mitochondria and the water around our cells and mitochondria, and acts like a battery at the end of the day. And I'm pretty sure Carrie would have touched upon this.
Yeah.
So again, we're plugged in when we're grounded and connected to the light. We're charging. We're able to recharge and regenerate and generate energy, whether it's from fat, protein, or carbohydrates. And where it comes from, it doesn't really matter. But again, when we are, well, actually, it does matter, because the stimulus from light where you are will influence certain amino acids and signal the body of their preferential fuel substrate, as an example. But again, so I'm in a UV rich environment, and again, I could probably use more carbohydrates than most people compared to the Europe or North America, because my environment, my light signal is different. And again, this is exciting the NAD pathway of how we shuttle electrons through the electron transport chain. Again, like if I was in the UK, my ability to utilize carbohydrates would be slightly impaired. It would be slow. And we would see that. We would see that with increased glucose levels more than normal. And again, there's actually some context there with like when you're in the tropics and you're in this environment, your glucose levels are going to be lower. When you're in winter periods in the UK or Europe or North America, your glucose levels should actually be higher in the winter. Why? Because glucose can be a bit like antifreeze. You actually get insulin resistance, or you should be insulin resistant in the winter. It's actually just a physiological response.
But where are we supposed to be getting, if I just think about like winter in the Northern Hemisphere, like where are we meant to be getting that glucose from?
Well, again, you don't. You make it endogenously.
Okay, from the liver.
Well, you're not. Well, yeah, and your insulin levels, how insulin is secreted and utilized changes. Again, you're changing. The environment will change certain receptors, which is going to be influencing how things basically work. When we think of a textbook, we just think of this. This is just like the only system, and there's no leverage here, and yet we're just fixated on like the summer metabolism. And again, humans don't live in either end of the spectrum or even seasons anymore. We live now in AC. We live now in artificial light. We're not exposed to the cold. And again, it doesn't mean going in ice baths. We're not exposed to the elements. We're not exposed to the sun, the heat. We're now basically fragile. And this is influencing our physiology and basically just making us incapable of doing things. And again, like the light will be different spectrums of a light. They're not created equal, a bit like food. Food is not created equal. Different spectrums of a light are not created equal. We have infrared light, which is always there, and 42% of it hits the earth, influences our mitochondria, goes through our eye, influences dopamine production. So again, light is touching our body everywhere. Light gets released in our gut. Our microbiome releases light. Our cells, our mitochondria release light from producing energy. And there we have this water inside our cells, which catch this light. Okay. So again, like we have the whole spectrum of light, and it can enhance our physiology in our favor, or it can be a detrimental thing. But again, there's context and there's personal advice around light exposure. Some people are not healthy enough to get UV light, as an example.
Because they've been so removed from it for so long? Or?
Exactly. So again, it's a bit like expecting someone just to go squat 400 pounds. It's terrible advice. And again, you see them with like a personal trainer or their friend helping them squat, and you're like, oh my God, this is just like an accident waiting to happen. It's the same thing when you see people who literally just go to the beach here and like, yeah, they're maybe plastered up with sun cream, and then they just get burned because they're not ready. Their skin hasn't had this sort of training to make the water in the cell, in the skin cell. So they can't absorb this light energy, basically, the wave and particle. And this is the problem. And again, it's only going to get worse the more you're inside and the more you don't understand about light.
How long would it take someone to build up a sort of
so again, you can help with like, there's some dietary nutrients that can help you with this. But again, it's really about building your infrared and red spectrum first. Your solar callus, which will probably be like the word, like you have your calluses here, you build up a solar skin callus. And again, even for females, it's like associated with like estrogen levels, because that actually influences skin thickness. So they actually have like protective factors from the sun more than men. But again, I would probably say like 3 to 4 months
of slow exposure.
Exactly. If you look at like the heliotherapy studies, like they actually just exposed like your ankle for 5 minutes, then it was like 10 minutes up to your knee, then it was 50 minutes up to like your whole leg, and then it was going from there and upper. So it's just interesting to see that stuff and how slow that they went. But again, it's really the red light and the infrared light which is driving this charge and influencing the mitochondrial enzymes or these proteins essentially, which is influencing this flow of energy through. So we can make energy.
And you're
also
talking
to be
talking
aware,
sorry, go on.
And you also have like another side of a coin here. Like right now, there's UVB here, and actually this slows down that flow of energy. So different times of the day in the light actually speeds down your flow of energy going through your mitochondria. So again, you're assuming just because you're in light, you're burning energy. Well, you're not. The different spectrums of light can slow and speed up your rate of energy production. And this is if you believe that it's all about food. It's not. It's a lot to do with like your battery, the water, the hydrogen and oxygen, this easy structured water that maybe Carrie touched upon, which is driving a lot of these sort of biochemical reactions.
Yeah, I mean, I saw a product the other day which was plant-based water, and that was water that had solely been extracted from plants. And I think one of the names on there was some sort of easy water they had mentioned. But I mean, do you see that as a gimmick, or you think that's actually?
Yeah, I mean, the context is, how was that plant grown? What was the water that plant consumed? So that would be one thing. Did it have like pesticides, fluoride in that water that the plant absorbed? What was the light environment of that plant? Was it artificial? Was it in a greenhouse? And again, people think a tomato is a tomato. A tomato in a greenhouse is different than grown on like a tomato on your windowsill or in your back garden. You can taste the difference, and the actual chemical or the physical structures of that tomato will be different because of a change in the environment. And again, there's changes in the environment of humans who live indoors and outside. There's changes in the red blood cell. And again, you can see this on blood work, the size and shape of red blood cells.
The problem I see is the reality of a lot of people's lives just doesn't allow for this way of living. Like most people are inside on a computer at an office, or working in some sort of environment that's not conducive to this. They might start work before it gets light in the morning, and they might finish after it's dark.
Yeah, so again, that's a choice at the end of the day that they've made way back when, or responsibilities of having kids or having a family or going to university or whatever it is. And again, I do feel for people who are maybe trapped in that sort of situation. But again, there are some things that you can leverage and do to bridge the gap. But at the end of the day, if you are not doing the simple things such as, I think if anyone, not like everyone should have the ability to go outside for 10 minutes a day, 15 minutes a day. Like 90% of the population don't even do that. Like, that's just laughable. We are zoo animals. People talk about animal rights. Like the vegans will talk about animal rights and like their freedom and like the problem with like caged chickens. Like humans are just like these. Yet you have like your blinkers on that you can't see humans are just like zoo animals. Going to the office in this box, going in the car in this box, not seeing daylight, eating shit food. We are just like zoo animals, basically.
Yeah, we've been totally caged and indentured into this system.
Yeah. And again, like, it's tough. I don't expect anyone to do what I do. But again, even if like you might think it's easy for me. I'm in Nicaragua. I'm in the sun. Life is great. But again, like, if I was in the UK, if I chose to be in the UK, I'd have skin in the game right now. I would be walking around with my shorts on, still in the UK. And again, like people say, no, you won't. Just go back on my Instagram and just see images of me. Ask my friends.
Yeah, I think that this rolls around to people taking a responsibility and taking that action to try and understand this stuff. Because I remember when I was working in London and I was in an office for nearly the whole day, but I would use the opportunity in the morning because I got the train at around 6 a.m. I think. So that was around sunrise, even in the winter, or just as sunrise was coming out. So I would walk to the train station with a t-shirt, even though it was fucking cold.
Yeah.
And then at lunchtime, I would get outside in a t-shirt, get at least some skin outside. And then in the evening, after I finished work, get to the gym. One thing I really struggled with though was my coffee intake and stimulant intake, like caffeine and tea intake. And then always in the office, people are passing around like confectionery or biscuits and saying like,
Yeah.
oh, go on, just have a go. And like, just have a couple of chocolate bars with us or have a biscuit with us. And it's like that tribalism starts to come in, and then everything in between. Like if you're in an environment with everyone who's doing this shit, you know, like, and everyone was going out to work. Like I think on Tuesday nights, Wednesday nights, Thursday nights, Friday, everyone was too hungover to go out. And it was like, you know, 4 nights out of the midweek, people would be going out for office drinks. And that was just mental. I was like, I don't want to live my life like this. This is just disgusting. I feel terrible.
Yeah, exactly. Again, if you don't do that, if you don't fall into their line of thinking, you're quack, or there's something wrong with you. Like, what's wrong with you? You don't drink? Like, you don't want to eat this like processed sugar coated junk food? Like,
get out.
You're just eating that. Like, what's wrong with you? You're going to the gym on a Friday night. But again, like it comes back down to perspectives. And again, people can happily live their lives like this. Like, good on them. If they want that, that's their choice. Again, like, you can't change people to do things. You can only like help them when they're ready, when they maybe have a bit of I don't know, a little bit of an open mind there, or they're asking you some questions, that they're stimulated by some of the things that you're doing. You can only lead by example. And when they ask these questions, you can say, oh, I'm doing this because of this, because I want to really use my weekends so I don't have to work in this environment anymore. Or I'm going to the gym, so then, yeah, it's easier for me to say no to the shit that you're eating, as an example, because it is. Because again, it's a compound effect. You're going to the gym, there's less likelihood of you eating crap, basically, because now you care about what you put in your body, because you know there's a connection where maybe you eat quality food, you eat decent protein, and then again, you can get that one extra rep. You can work towards a PB. Your perspectives are changing. What you care about, what you value has moved. Instead about you value now of just like wasting, or you value just the social time of getting wasted. Because again, you don't really know any better.
I think ultimately, the more a person, or certainly myself in that situation, the more I actually decided, you know, I actually can't live with getting drunk at the weekend. I can't live with like X, Y, and Z, or eating all these chocolates or sweets in the office. It then became very hard to even be in that environment, to even be like, why am I putting the effort into going into this office? Like, although I've been paid reasonably well, like the money doesn't actually make up for how crap I'm feeling. And there's a ceiling on the health level I can get to because of the environment that I'm in.
Definitely. I mean, it's much more harder to say no to things than to say yes to things. Saying no is it's a test. Like saying no to pizza, to drugs. Like I was recently in Costa Rica, and my friend's mum, who I was staying with, she was like smoking weed, and I could smell it. And again, I really like the smell of weed. And again, I've spoken it before in my past. I actually used, So, and again, it's just like, oh, there's the temptation there.
Yeah.
And again, it's so easy. And Charlotte, do you want some? And I was like, it's so easy to say yes. Like, fuck it. Let me have it. But again, saying no, it just makes you so much stronger and solidifies everything else. Like saying no to things, it's really powerful. Really powerful. And
it solidifies all of your objectives and your like your desires.
100%. It builds confidence, and it's a test. So again, like you can go around walking a supermarket now and be like, no to that, no to that, no to that. And it'll be like, it's liberating for how I see it. It's liberating to say no.
Do you know what? I go into a supermarket sometimes and I'm like, there's not actually much here that I want to eat anymore. Like, I mean, apart from the like the fruits and the veggies and the meat and stuff, I'm like, but that's like 10% of the supermarket now. The rest is just like sludge, but I know it's delicious. The problem is, like, I look at it and I'm like, I bet I would like eating that for like the first 10 minutes or 5 minutes, but I'm going to feel terrible afterwards.
So again, like you've changed your perspective. Instead of thinking of like that short-term taste and moment, you're thinking longer. You're thinking mid and longer term, and you're just making better choices. So again, that's a behavior. You haven't used the calorie app to say, okay, that's only got 100 calories. I can eat that compared to that 300 full fat version, as an example. You're making the connection with your brain that that's going to be a bad potential move based on my values. And again, you're just taking taking action in a positive step.
Drink?
I don't drink.
No,
I
good
can't
man.
remember last time. I can't remember last time I drank.
Yeah.
If I had to guess, I think it'd be about 11 years ago.
11 years. Wow, good shout, mate. I'm nearly
so.
on 18 months in January.
Congrats.
But
I think
it's a game changer.
It is. I mean, I can see why people drink, because again, it makes you socially I mean, it makes you a little bit more free to a certain degree. Like, you don't care. But again, if you operate with a no fucks mentality anyway, you dance, you can approach girls, you can talk to anyone, you can have fun without alcohol.
Do you know what? You say that. You say that it loosens you up, but I've been to places where there's like 5 of us that are not drinking, and then there's like a bar of like 20 people who are drinking, and the people who are not drinking are having the most fun. Like, we're the ones dancing, we're the ones like totally rowdy, but lots of people who are drinking, they're either super paranoid about how people are viewing them, or like trying to be cool, or like, you know, they need like 3 or 4 drinks before they loosen up. Like, it's a total game changer.
Yeah, I mean, it depends what kind of bar you go to. If you go to like a gringo bar with like all people just using it, I don't know. Maybe it's just depending on the bar and where you are.
Yeah.
But again, you don't need to drink, and you can have a good time. And again, you're probably going to have more memories and like meet cool people that you remember and can write their number down or in your phone without making a mistake or something. Or even getting like a STD or something like that. So again,
you can still get STDs when you're sober, though.
You can, but like, again, it's just like this cycle of like working hard during the week and getting wasted, rinse and repeat. It's just like, again, people can live their life that way if they want. However, there's another option. Like, you don't have to. You can still go to the club. You can still have robust health where you can go out to 2 a.m. in the morning, wake up at 7 a.m. and like cop DM, seize the day. And again, like, your health is there to flex, basically. So again, the more healthy you are, the more you can sort of get away with things, like going out clubbing, like eating junk food if you wanted to indulge in that, if you really wanted to. Your health would basically bounce back. That's what your health is there for, basically. It's there to flex like your muscle. And again, when you don't have good health, you can't get away with things. You are more sensitive to things. There's less room for maneuver. You have to be more strict and regimental with your diet. You have to fear plants, as an example. Because again, your gut's a mess. Because again, you don't understand what you don't know and what you can't control for. And again, or you just like miss out on the common sense of not eating non-seasonal food. And again, like, no one really should be eating or even consuming coffee. Like, drinking coffee in the UK is a bit of a misnomer, unfortunately. Coffee grows here in Central America.
Yeah,
why?
So we can have it.
Well, exactly. Well, we can have it, but again, we need to use it with the power of sunlight. The reason why is because it's grown at altitudes, it's grown high V environments, it's got unique phenols in it, and again, it interacts and influences via sunlight. That's the real mechanism of action. And again, if you're drinking it, say for example in like London, and you're compounded with like the radiation from that, you already have like poor health. Yeah, like, you might feel okay with it, but again, it's going to be like a bottleneck and going to be like, I wouldn't say destroying your health or presenting problems. I don't think it's the worst thing out there. But again, it's not going to be good, because again, it like Paul Saladino says, there's some half truth to what he says. It is slightly of a poison as well. And again, it's only a poison because you can't use it based on your conditions inside you and your environment. However, if you're optimal and in this environment, you can use it. Again, that's all for like these pro-oxidants found in foods. Green tea, lectins as an example. They're no problem. Like, even the people, like, you probably see it, they eat the green tomatoes, the tomatillos, or what they're called. They're like the most highest lectin containing foods or oxalate containing foods. They're horrendous. Yet people do fine with them here. There must be something else. It must be obviously the environment where you're living, being in America, with everyone in a populated city using 10 devices, using Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, all around this sort of jungle or zoo. The people here have no problem eating lectins. And again, they don't actually go in the sunlight. They're scared of the sun, the people here, and yet they're not doing too bad.
Where would you recommend people go if they want to cut through all this bullshit? Because like even, you know, the likes of Saladino and Lane Norton and Graham Tomlinson and like all these people, like,
I
because
think you have to,
it's sound bites online.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't listen to the sound bites. And again, like you do hear when you actually listen to them at full length, you do hear some of the context. Like there's a guy, I think Ken Berry, whatever his name is. And again, he actually, on his podcast with Saladino, he actually applied some context and he did question Saladino's stuff, saying about seasonal local food. The issue with him is like, I can't eat carbohydrates that make me fat, which is just a complete moronic thing to say.
Who says that? Ken Berry?
Yeah. And I don't think listening to like TikTok or Reels is a good way of building or making choices about your health. Again, I'd get stimulated by them, but I wouldn't make, okay, cool, he says that in that soundbite, I'm going to do that. But again, maybe listen to their podcast, maybe listen to their perspective, but just be skeptical, essentially. Be skeptical of all these people. Understand that all these people, all these gurus, experts, all conflicted with. Like, again, the amount of shit that I hear with people talking about, okay, there's this 7-form magnesium, you got to try it, it's the best one out there. Again, it's total horse shit. It makes zero difference to a certain degree if it's like got 7 forms or not. And if, again, it's like the dose in itself is like 200 milligrams of that, it's probably getting pissed out anyway. And then you also see it with like the green powders that everyone touts, with the free vitamin D and K2. Complete bullshit. There's no need you need a green, like you don't need a green powder. How are those greens formulated? Where were they grown? All these contexts. And again, it's just conflicted with all these gurus who are spreading this sort of half-truth stuff out there, manipulating what they want to say, shutting down anybody who applies a bit of context and nuances with, having guests on their podcasts which support their view. Again, it's a very conflicted space to find information. But again, just be skeptical and listen to these people on the extreme scale, and then just go from there. Listening to the vegans, listen to the carnivores, and then maybe like pick up some people in the middle and be like, yeah, that sort of makes sense now. Like, again, it's so common sense just to eat local and seasonal. Ask your great grandmother what she had as a carbohydrate source. She'll probably just say the things grown near to her.
But most people don't even know what seasonal is now.
Again, and that's actually changed from what it means. Again, I had a client yesterday from Israel, and we were discussing seasonal food for her. And again, she was telling me that she can have bananas in Israel, and actually bananas do grow in Israel. But the thing is they've manipulated the way they grow now with certain trees and with greenhouses, or the way they protect them and create heat. So again, she shouldn't be eating bananas all year round, but she should at certain times. So again, you can, there's obviously resources and information online where you can go into the stuff. There's one definitely in the UK where you can find with like farmers markets that tells you the seasons of what's growing seasonally. But that's also applied with like the fats in the animals that we eat. Their fatty acid composition changes within the seasons as well. Fish fatty acids change. And again, we should respect that. And again, that's like a bit like, eating lamb is a big thing in the UK. Well, that spring lamb is very much different in taste based on the fats from that spring lamb, because that lamb has basically been indoors because of the weather in the UK, compared to eating it in the summer when the sun would have been sulfating its hormones and blood. Basically, it would actually taste different. The fatty acid would be different.
And higher quality for your health, or just different?
Yeah, just different essentially. Yeah, but likely higher quality, and that's also like the changes that you should see within butter. So the yellowness of the butter would be the beta carotenes, and that should change throughout the whole year. And that's also when you're drinking raw milk. I'm not a big fan of raw milk. I think it's overhyped. But again, there should actually be a change in the color of raw milk based on how the grass is, again, because it's a light story with food. The cows eat the grass, the bacteria change that grass into different substrates. And again, obviously we consume the byproducts of the cow. And the milk should actually change color throughout the seasons. So again, it's the whole food chain. The whole food chain is dictated by the seasons and the relationship between the light, the temperature, and And again, that's just how it works. And again, when we look at like things like blood chemistry or functional medicine testing, we don't take that into consideration. Like no doctor tells you that your cholesterol should essentially be lower in the summer and higher in the winter. No doctor tells you saying that your blood pressure should be 20% higher in the winter compared to the summer. This is just normal physiology.
Because most doctors don't know that. Most doctors don't, like, do you know what I mean? They have an overall view on how to medicate, but not an overall view on
educate. Medicate, not educate. So again, but they should, their first rule, their first premise is do no harm. So again, when they're putting people on statins and blood pressure medication, they are doing harm. Again, like health is basically a risk benefits ratio. It's a risk benefit ratio game basically, and it's applied on a personal context. So like people just need to be like thinking for themselves, be skeptical, do the rounds, listen to all the information, or not all the information, but snippets of different subjects, and really get a grasp. Don't go too heavy with the nutritional stuff. Don't go too heavy with like the plant toxins. Don't go too heavy with like the plant-based narrative of like meat slowly killing the palate, and then just ignore that there's all plastics that's washed up on the beaches, or just be ignorant of like how the Amazon delivery gets them. So again, just take everything with a pinch of salt. Be skeptical. Ask questions. I think I give out good advice for people to go on with, like, who want to learn more about like reading this stuff with books, research papers. Again, you can see the stuff on Twitter. I'm very diverse in like what I read, what I share. It could be one day talking about hemoglobin concentrations in obesity, compared to like one day about air pollution or chlorine byproducts in showers or something like that. So again, it's just being diverse with what you absorb, and being careful with what you absorb as well.
Spot on. Super good note to leave us on. We've run over time, but it's all good. It's all fucking good info. Ryan, where can people find you if they want to hear more about you?
So my website is livevitae, livevitae.com. I've got a newsletter. I'm on Twitter, Levitae UK, Instagram, Levitae. Just send me a message, drop me an email. I'm approachable, so just reach out. But I mean, message me. Don't just leave a comment. So if you want to message me, just direct message me or email. I think people in this space just think that you can just like, I'm gonna have a conversation in a comment. Like just email. I have my email open to everyone.
Yeah, epic. Mate, thank you so much for coming on. I'm looking forward to seeing more in the future. And let's catch up again soon.
Take care.
Cheers,
thank
mate.
you.